Neil Armstrong, Shakespeare, the Queen, Elvis Presley, Nelson Mandela. It doesn't take an Einstein to realize that all of these personalities have a place in history for the legacies they left. But I'm not here to talk about individuals. Instead, I would like to invite you to think differently about legacy, to look at who and what really builds legacy, to recognize the value of the unseen, and to consider what could happen if we harness the power of community. Let me start by asking you a question. When you hear the word legacy, what do you think? Someone or something bigger than you, louder, more visible, historical? Often we think of singular characters. I wonder why we're conditioned to focus on individuals before collective achievement. Take Neil Armstrong as a stellar example. In July 1969, he landed on the moon. We know the name, we've seen the footage, it's etched in history. I wasn't born when Armstrong landed on the moon, but as a child, I learnt those infamous words. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I even remember writing into a children's TV show and suggesting that they should introduce commercial flights to the moon and that I'd like a ticket. Well, we can all wish upon a star, can't we? But Armstrong did not get to the moon alone. The legacy may be linked to him, but the achievement was not his alone. There are many known facts about the Apollo space program with its 400,000 NASA engineers, scientists, and technicians. And then there are some lesser known stories, such as the vital role played by Eleanor Foraker and other seamstresses from Playtex, famed ironically for their gravity-defying underwear. These ladies worked with NASA on the design and hand-stitching of the spacesuits that would be worn by the 12 men who landed on the moon. Eleanor even introduced a system of allocating different coloured pins to each seamstress. At the end of a shift, they would have to account for those pins to ensure that none were left dangerously in a spacesuit. Such a small but life-saving idea, don't you think? The ladies are visible on NASA video footage that was shown and shared some years later. And yet, names and voices were not included. Their contributions seemingly overlooked, unsung, and yet invaluable. Legacy is complex, but it is rarely built by a single who in history. Having found such a shining example of legacy building in history, I began thinking about the present day and wondering if we overlook ordinary people and if history will forget them. I call these ordinary people, or hidden workforce, if you like, the I'm Juster brigade. Collectively, they build legacies, and yet if you ask them about their role, they would probably reply and say, oh, I'm just the ... They are everywhere, amongst us right now, and particularly in the voluntary sector. Earlier this year, I witnessed the I'm Juster brigade in action at the London Marathon as fundraiser and cheerleader to my husband and two friends. Now, the sheer scale of this event is overwhelming. More than 53,000 runners aged 18 to 91. And from the 6 ever-presents who have run every year since 1981, to the 44 who broke Guinness World Records, and every runner in between, legacies were built. But these were facilitated by the organisers, the public services, the supporters, charities, and an estimated 6,000 volunteers. Collective triumph enabled by the I'm Juster brigade. Isn't it time we stopped using the word just? There is no just in raising over £65 million for charity in one of the largest fundraising events of the year globally. And there is no just when parent and teacher association volunteers add an estimated £120 million to the UK school purse in a year. And there is certainly no just in the £300 billion that volunteering is worth in England and Wales. Can you imagine the social and economic burden on society if we ignore statistics like these? There is no such thing as just in anyone's role. Legacy building doesn't just happen. It's clear then, both from history lessons and the present day, that ordinary people need to be seen and can make a difference. But there is a bigger point to consider. Let me explain. In 2021, I received a Prime Minister's Award for my voluntary work. I remember my surprise and the warm glow of pride. I was delighted, of course, but I hadn't done anything for the glory, so I was almost a little embarrassed. It wasn't until I received a message from a friend that I realized the true significance of that recognition. It read, "I'm so glad you've been recognized. You've got community running through your blood, which inspires us all to do more." And there it was. In that moment, I realized the true impact of that award. Personally, I had been seen, albeit in my own little universe, but at a higher level, the value of the contribution had been recognized and was now inspiring others to get involved. 2 things strike me. 1, legacy is not just what we leave behind. It's about living and breathing micro opportunities that present every day. And 2, we are all involved. Harnessing the power of the collective is critical. But how do we do that? Well, by opening that invitation to think differently about legacy. And on that point, I urge you, your organizations, your family, and your communities to RSVP positively, to recognize your role as an accomplice and to recognize the value of the unsung, who impact everything. Simple fact, not rocket science. To see that legacy is not created by a single who in history. Using the words of Aristotle, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. To use your voice to perform your bit part in the legacy building play of life. What you say and do in life matters. Look around you. Things don't just happen. And to change your perspective. The story of Christopher Wren and the 3 bricklayers illustrates this perfectly. Wren had been commissioned to rebuild St. Paul's Cathedral after the Great Fire of London. It is said that one day he came across 3 bricklayers and asked each what they were doing. The first said, "I'm laying bricks." The second responded, "I'm building a wall." But the third replied, "I'm building a cathedral." The difference? Perspective. We need to think differently about legacy, to set aside notions of history and heroes, and to feel part of a bigger mission with a more universal purpose. So today and tomorrow, instead of just thinking about what you may want out of life, perhaps also consider what life may need out of you. Because living legacies are built from collective achievement. And it begins when we all take one small step.